Why do I hold XRP? Because Ripple's the chosen one to lead the new global digital payment system, and they use XRP. In 2013, the Federal Reserve began looking for faster payments options. 2 years later, an action plan was born and a federal payments task force was created. It included one company focused on crypto, Ripple. In 2014, the World Bank and Better Than Cash Alliance, which includes the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Clinton Global Initiative, and the governments of 32 countries, put out a report called The Opportunities of Digitizing Payments. 1 year later, the Better Than Cash Alliance featured one crypto company on their website, Ripple. Today, Better Than Cash Alliance and all other UN initiatives are focused on a single agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. You can see the SDGs logo on Bill Gates' lapel, world-leading companies, the Better Than Cash Alliance website, and on the UN's official exchange, Exchange. What crypto is Exchange officially utilizing for their carbon credit solution? XRP. The world will move to a new international standard for exchanging electronic messages between financial institutions by 2025 called ISO 20022. Who was the first ISO 20022 member focused on distributed ledger technology? Ripple. Who's partnered with over 300 financial institutions, including Bank of America, American Express, PNC, Santander, SBI, HSBC, Standard Chartered Bank, Bank of England, India, Singapore, Scotland, Australia, and Indonesia, the largest banks in Japan, Canada, Egypt, the Middle East, United Arab Emirates, Thailand, Morocco, Bhutan, South Korea, Brazil, and Latin America? Ripple. Who is a former employee overseeing the Federal Reserve? Ripple. A former employee overseeing the world's largest asset manager, BlackRock's digital asset division? Ripple. Leading Australia's CBDC effort? Ripple. Who hired a former Treasury of the United States? Ripple. 2 former Federal Reserve attorneys to their board? Ripple. 2 former Clinton and Obama advisors? Former Minister of Defense and Economics of Germany? Former business director at Swift? Former Swift board member? Former CFO of PayPal? Former head of the DTCC? Former chief business officer at Uber? Former VP of Amazon and former SEC chair on their legal team? Ripple. Who's a member of the Digital Pound Foundation, Digital Dollar Project, Digital Euro Association, Mojaloop, IMF's high-level advisory board on fintech, Hyperledger Blockchain Consortium, Open Payments Coalition, Faster Payments Council, Global Payments Steering Group, Cross-Border Working Group, International Association for Trusted Blockchain Applications, Crypto Climate Accord, University Blockchain Initiative, World Wide Web Consortium, and a featured partner of the World Economic Forum with 3 members of their team directly listed on the WF website? Ripple. Now, does Ripple and XRP sound like they're going to disappear, or do they sound like they're part of a much bigger plan? You decide.
Ultimately, what I think is going to happen is that this currency crisis that I've spoken about will cause some kind of an event where the system gets reset. Now, whether they write off sovereign debt in that environment, or whether they come up with a new currency system like a new Bretton Woods, I really don't know. I think something's going to be forced on the governments of the world. What I think will come next is some sort of government-sponsored stablecoin. Whether it's FedCoin or what do they call it, the Coin Now or something. I know they announced it a month ago. Yeah. I don't remember the exact name, but I think the genie's kind of out of the bottle with the stable coins and with the Bitcoin and the rise of crypto. I think that the governments of the world are going to adopt what was created in the private market and use it. I don't think we're going to go to a Bitcoin standard. I don't think Bitcoin's going to become money. I think governments are going to kind of co-opt that digital asset space for their own. It doesn't mean that digital assets won't still exist and be a store of value or trade as a reserve asset in some form or another. But I do think that we're going, I expect us to continue to have a fiat system. It would be the first time kind of in the history of the world, not totally, but to a certain extent that no government was overseeing the money, right? And it was just a total free market for money. I think that's very highly unlikely. I know kind of within the crypto world and within the digital asset space, DeFi is kind of an important thing. I actually think that the world, this is not what I want, but it's what I see. I think we're going towards a more centralized world rather than a decentralized world. I think power is being consolidated rather than given away. And I think when we get into this sovereign debt crisis, you're going to see even more power consolidated. And when that happens, I do not expect whoever wins that battle, I don't expect them to cede power over the currency to somebody else, or certainly not a private market currency.
I'm convinced that we will destroy, unfortunately, a lot of employment. Just think of self-guided cars and all the drivers losing their jobs. Let's look at the bank employees and so on.
If you're left behind, you're facing something far worse, which is to be completely irrelevant. They won't even need you as a serf or as a slave.
Give a type of money that can only be spent for a specific number of reasons. And some worry about that state control or whatever, but like in this particular narrow use case, you want to give checks to individuals to get the economy moving again. Yeah. So if you think of programmable money that expires if you don't spend spend it.
Uber, Bitcoin, self-driving cars. Combine those three together and you have the self-owning taxi. A car that is a corporation that owns itself, pays for the car lease, the car insurance, and the gasoline from the revenues it makes, giving passengers a ride, and there's not a single human involved in that matter.
We're going to a different economy, and we're going to be learning more about that as we go. But clearly, we're learning that things can be done from remote locations. We're learning that technology can replace people even more than we thought.
We're not going back to the same economy. We're recovering, but to a different economy, and it'll be one that is more leveraged to technology. And I worry that that is going to make it even more difficult than it was for many workers.
In Silicon Valley, and my friends who work in technology know that what we did to the manufacturing workers, we are now going to do to the retail workers, the call center workers, the fast food workers, the truck drivers, and then even bookkeepers, accountants, insurance agents, lawyers, and on through the economy. So what happened to the manufacturing workers is a very clear sign.
This effort, and China has big plans for this. They intend to seed their digital yuan into the global environment by giving it away to visitors at next winter's Olympics. When they arrive at the airport, they're going to get yuan digital wallets. They're going to receive digital yuan. They're going to use it throughout their visits to Beijing, and then they're going to take it back to their home countries. They see this as a huge advantage. Why? Because who controls the underlying protocols?
Central Bank of the United States was founded in 1913. Guess what else was founded in 1913? Tax Department.
Yeah, the Federal Reserve and the IRS.
And so when you look at all this, and then if you read Marx, he says that a progressive income tax is necessary for the spread of communism. And then when they cut off Keystone XL pipeline, inflation went through the roof. Now the poor are already poor. But when you raise inflation, the price of fuel, the middle class got poor. And now when I shop, I look around and I go, the retailers, they're on sale. Everything's on sale. I can't help myself. Money, I'm having a great time. But I feel for the retailers right now because the customers are going broke. So is the intent evil?
Since 1971, what's happened with the income inequality, the obesity rate, the incarceration rate, the divorce rate, the medium income, debt levels, everything since 1971. Why since 1971? It's the year we got off the gold standard. So you can see, it's 100 charts that show what the WTF happened in 1971, and you can see it's just like crazy. The reason why I start with that is because when was the World Economic Forum founded? And so the whole world went off the rails in 1971. When you distort the money, you get all types of distortions.
It was in 1972 I realized what had happened. I was flying in Vietnam, and that's when I went on the gold standard. And I bought my first little Krugerrand in Hong Kong for about $50.
A lot of people might have heard of something like Davos, where every year the world leaders, a lot of people call them the world elite. I don't like to use that word. They're not elite in anything. None of us would hire them in our business, but the world leaders, the policy makers, if you will, the think tankers, they get together every year in Davos. It's politicians and business people getting together, public and private, getting together to set policy. So they get together every year in Davos, Switzerland at the World Economic Forum. And so it was founded by this guy, Klaus Schwab, and he's created this think tank, bringing these people together to try to figure out a better way, a more equitable way to run the world. Watch out, anytime you see that word equitable, you know what they're talking about. They're talking about Marxism. And so what he's done is he's just taken the same ideas. You said we haven't seen this before, but of course we have. It's the same ideas being rehashed. And so it's just Marxism all over. So they get the world leaders together, the politicians, the public, and the private, and they come together in what he's calling stakeholder capitalism. So instead of businesses should focus on profit, he says, no, business shouldn't focus on profit. Business should focus on the community, ESG, environmental, social, governance. We should be equitable. But they want to do it through power, through control, forcing people to comply instead of educating people and showing people better ways. So now if you don't fall in line with what their policies are, no money for you, no investment for you, right? And if these big companies don't follow along with their policies and push these things down, they don't get the funding, and then they basically get pushed out of the system. And so for the last 12 years, I've studied the macro. I learned a concept called wealth transfers. Money doesn't disappear. it transfers. And so when I lost my wealth, somebody else got that. I didn't like that.
That's a very good point.
And it's happening today. And so I realized there's certain times and conditions where these wealth transfers happen. And so I've spent the last 12 years studying these wealth transfers to figure out how do I get on the receiving end instead of being on the receiving end of those things. I reference quite often what Henry Kissinger said, which was maybe a warning to the world, but I think it was more of a call to arms on their side. So he said, if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control a continent. If you control the money, you control the world.